What's up, Starcraft fans? Last time we did how to play level 1 Phoenix, which was not the usual build, admittedly. I used Scouts instead of the normal stuff I do with Caldalis or Carriers or, that stuff. But this time, we will also use a non-standard composition with level 1 Dehaka. For obvious reasons, the usual units to go with as Dehaka are either Tyrannosaurs. You can either go for Creeper Hosts, you can go Primal Mutalisk and Primal Guardians, you can go Impalers. The thing is, obviously, those do not unlock at level 1. With level 1, you're essentially forced into Hydralisk, since that's your only versatile unit. The Hydralisk can shoot both ground and air. It is relatively cheap. It's like a 1v1 Hydralisk. And it's not fantastic, but it's certainly there. The best ability is, as you know, availability. So you'd rather have something that you have access to than something you don't have access to. I'll also go with Primal Hosts here. These Primal Hosts are kind of a secret weapon of sorts. They can spawn free locusts. The Primal Hosts themselves do not attack, but they can spawn free locusts, and that will give you continuous value, because the primal host can continuously spawn units without actually trading. You don't trade your resources that you use to buy the primal host. The primal locusts are just free, so you just kind of trade those out, and you'll gain more value towards the end. So, regarding the leveling Ascension, the level progression, level 2, Ravasaur and Primal Igniter, don't really use those, so nice to have real units, but not that fantastic. Ravasaur upgrade cache, again, not that big of a deal. Level 4, I believe, is when you first get a decent power spike. This level 4 ability will allow your Primal Worms Deep Tunnel, which means you can finally have mobile, quote-unquote, mobile detection, because your worms are your only detector prior to level 4, and, well, actually, prior to level 5. So prior to level 5, you only have worms, and they are pretty stationary. They cannot relocate until level 4. Level 5, of course, is when you get the ability to detect cloaked and burrowed units. This, I think, is another big power spike. You want the increased armor for Dehaka, and naturally, you want mobile detection, which is why level 5 is pretty big. Level 6, Primal Mutalisk and Primal Guardian. You get your first real unit here, the Primal Mutalisk and the Primal Guardian. They are not yet the level 15 versions of themselves, but still pretty good. This is when you'll get them. So this level 7, this will allow your Mutalisks to revive after a short time. Basically, your Mutalisks will revive every minute. If they die, they will respawn, and if you keep them alive for another minute, they will respawn again. And it just keeps going. So you'll have a lot of value from the Mutalisks as long as you keep them alive for a minute or longer at a time. The Creeper Host and Primal Impaler, this will actually allow you to make Creeper Hosts. So, Creeper Host, one of the best units that Dehaka has, especially when you're talking about sniping main objectives. Primal Igniter and Primal Impaler, this is pretty good if you like going Impalers. Very useful. Impalers are against trains, the suppression towers, even if you want the void shards on Rift's Core Hall, very good. Also, if you're able to, the Mobius Hybrid, part and parcel, but yeah, not really something we use it on. Not me, at least. Level 10, another huge power spike. This will allow, I think, Glevig, Mervar, and Descartes all get abilities with level 10, but my takeaway from level 10 is Glevig really ramps up, because you will get that fire, but it's a huge thermal lance that shoots in a straight direction, and it damages. Basically, Glevig gets the Dehaka equivalent of Griffin Airstrike. It damages a lot of units in a big area, a long rectangular area. The difference is, of course, the Fire Breath is free for Glevig, so it's even better than the Griffin Airstrike, because, yeah, it's free. It's just on a timer. The Tyrannosaur, another great unit that Dehaka has, but you will obviously want upgrades for that before you start using it. Survival Instinct, really good upgrade, but not as massive as level 10 or even level 5. Yeah, so my top 2 upgrades for Dehaka, well, I'll get to that. Elite Primal Zerg, so your Primal Ultras and Tyrannosaur will get the special, will get upgrades, and this is when your Creeper hosts will be really able to do the Arcturus mech strategy of sending free locusts toward main objectives from a safe distance. The Creepers have 180 health. They are very difficult to kill, so you can kind of just camp your Creeper host far away, manually spawn locusts. Once the locusts spawn, click the locust, then send them to the main objective, and then the main objective will usually die. That's how we use Creeper hosts for Dehaka. This one will allow you Dehaka to have a second ability point at the beginning of the game. Pretty big, I would say. It is as big as 10 and 5. 10 and 5. Maybe as big as 10. I don't think it's as big as 4 and 5, because 4 and 5 are when you get your mobile detection. And of course, G mutation, your primal units will be better. If you don't play on brutal difficulty when you start leveling, you could start brutal on level 4 or 5, maybe level 5. If you play on normal, you can start your hard difficulty at level 5, and once you hit level 10, that's when you can ramp it up to brutal. Level 10 really is when you can start having amazing primal pack eaters. Although you can always wait until level 13 when you can just use the Creeper host to snipe main objectives. That also will work very well using the strategy I told you earlier. Anyway, the showcase will be on Chain of Ascension this time. Brian, let's hear about the map.
Chain of Ascension is the map where we have to support Jinara in her fight against Amon's champion. To support Jinara, each player needs to stand a unit near Jinara to push her along the track to the southeast corner. If we push the fight all the way to the southeast corner, we win. But if Amon's forces support their champion and push them all the way to our corner, we lose.
Alright, so there it is. Thank you to Legendary Center and Trent who are supporting me the mobilization rate here. And Darth and Shadow Archon who are supporting me in the Pulse Cannon tier. And thank you to all my supporters on Patreon. Again, this will be the Maguro version of the map, so I don't have to bother anyone to get into a game with me. Also, so I can select the enemy composition. I know what I'm fighting here. Anyway. Alright, so I use this command called -ally, so I can take control of my ally's force. Don't worry, I don't get his income, just control of his dudes. So your build for Dehaka this game will be to get a fast drone, and then at 19 supply, you want to get your first gas. The first gas will allow you to get your pack eaters out. So your strategy this game will be to rush out the pack eaters. You want them out as early as you can, because the pack eaters are anchors for your army to allow you to push into main objectives and defend against big attack waves. So I set this worker out at 21 supply. As soon as I had 21 supply, I set the worker out, and I started this Primal Warden over here. The Primal Warden is a requisite building to build your pack leaders, and of course for those who play 1v1, the Primal Warden is where you produce all your units. So every single unit that Dehaka has is produced out of the Primal Warden. Here's Dehaka. He spawns differently from other heroes. So what he does is he spawns at 1 minute from this little den here, and the nice thing about Dehaka is since he's at a 1 minute, he can immediately go out and deal damage. But the different thing about Dehaka is he gathers essence. So whenever there are fallen enemies on the field, when Dehaka is in play, they drop these little things called essence. So so you can see there's a little DNA-like thing here, a double helix of a DNA thing. So that is an essence. Every time Dehaka approaches an essence, he absorbs it, and you can see there's a counter here that shows how much essence he has. So the more essence he collects, the more powers he gains. So what I did here at the beginning is I sent Dehaka right away to this here enemy camp to farm essence so he can get more powerful. A lot of players will go for the rocks as Dehaka. You do not want to do that. That is called rock slapping, and it is generally the mark of someone who is inexperienced at the game. The reason is, yes, Dehaka can technically burst down the rocks, but it's a bad idea because A, Dehaka is, as I mentioned, much better off getting additional powers by farming essence. And B, you can farm, you can break the rocks using the Primal Warden anyway, and even produce a couple of Zerglings out of it to break the rocks for you. So, now that we have established that, the way you farm Essence Dehaka is by Devour. So, when Dehaka spawns, he will get 1 ability point. You can assign that to a varying number of abilities, but my go-to is Devour. Devour will allow you to eat any enemy unit on the map, unless it's like a map boss or something. Anyway, with Devour, you have to realize this important thing. The cooldown of Devour is not fixed. Whenever you devour something, it will go on cooldown, but the length of the cooldown will always depend on the remaining health of the unit you devoured. If you devoured this little Zergling over here, it will go off cooldown really fast, like 2 seconds. It will go, it will be available once again 2 seconds. But if you devour a Mothership, for example, or a big hybrid, or a Thor, the cooldown for Devour will be much longer. It's, I think, 10 seconds for every, or rather 1 second for every 10 health that the enemy you devoured has. So if you devoured a big hybrid, the cooldown will set all the way to a minute, which I think is the upper limit. So yeah, to gain the most value out of Devour, you want to devour small units or big units that have a little life remaining, meaning you want to soften them up first, damage them until they are as close to 1 health as possible, and then you devour them. So let's watch that in action. You can see I'm fighting these Zerglings. I'm trying to devour the ones that I'm damaging first, and you can see the cooldown goes really fast. You can actually just spam this ability when you are knowledgeable enough to whittle down enemies. So the build here, as I mentioned, once the Primal Warden is complete, again, keep note, all Dehaka's units are built from here. Once Dehaka's Primal Warden is complete, you should have enough resources to start Glevig's Den. So Glevig's Den unlocks Glevig and a bunch of units such as the Hydralisk and the Roach. So let's see that in action. So the build again I did is to start the Primal Barrack or Glevig's Den, and also to start the extractor so I can start harvesting more gas out of it. So I poke in here again, see that there are no more Zerglings to devour. So let's wander into our expansion this time. And again, I retreated from this fight because I do not want to engage the Spine Crawler while I'm trying to. I want to keep Dehaka's health as high as possible so that I can actually stay longer in the fight. So I uprooted this barracks. The reason I uprooted that barracks or the Primal Warden is because this thing can shoot. It can help you soften up the enemies long enough for Dehaka to devour them. So I can see I started my Primal Hive here. Again, that is the equivalent of a hive. This Primal Hive. I built it like as close as possible to the action without having itself targeted by the enemies. So once again, I send these enemies to Dehaka. So you notice that I devoured that Aberration first. That Aberration will give Dehaka a massive buff. The Aberration is a massive hit along with things like Thors, Ultralisks, Colossus. When you devour massive units, Dehaka will gain a shoot-back ability, meaning whenever an enemy attacks Dehaka, he shoots back a spike. So you can see this spike is protruding from Dehaka. It's shooting from Dehaka right back into this Spine Crawler. So you actually, yeah, you can see he attacks just by being attacked. It's like you give Amon a double-edged mutator. And you can see I'm trying to get this Ultralisk as low health as possible to minimize the cooldown. And I do that by retreating Dehaka a little bit, let the Primal Barracks take a little bit of damage, but ultimately devour it. And it's low enough, so the cooldown, yes, it's longer, but not quite as long. So, as I mentioned before, you want to rush out your pack eaters. As soon as Glevig's Den finishes around 3:30, you want to start Mervar's Den. And there it is. So I stand guard here to wait for the first escort wave, because that is a lot of essence that you can gather as Dehaka. By the way, I have chosen to produce Hydralisks for this game. The second ability I unlock for Dehaka is Leap. Leap is a leap, a jump, and any ground unit that Dehaka lands on will take damage. So these group of Zerglings right here will take a bunch of damage. In fact, you saw earlier that I destroyed a few of them, which really softened up the attack wave, allowing Dehaka to kind of survive the rest of the, as the Hydralisks spawn. So I actually wanted to use the leap on this group as well, but you can see it is on cooldown, which means Dehaka will take damage while being able to damage all of these guys. So what I do is retreat Dehaka. It's this thing called micro. You do that action to keep Dehaka alive for longer, so that the leap is now off cooldown. You can use it once again, smash this entire group of Zerglings, and make the fight a little more even with Dehaka, Primal Barracks, and 2 Hydralisks versus 4 Hydralisks and the Zergling. Pretty even fight. No, not really, but it's still more even than it was before, or at least more favorable for me. So now I push it to here with my 2 Hydralisks, shooting safely. So you don't want to engage with just a whenever you have a choice, you do not want to engage with Hydralisks alone, because they're pretty squishy. 100 health, that's not a lot. They will get burst down fairly quickly if you let them fight on their own. That's why I had Dehaka in front. But now that there's this one spine crawl or spore crawler, I can let that Hydralisk finish it off. You can see, as Brian mentioned earlier rather, both allies had to send at least 1 unit near Jinara. So you can see this probe, Dehaka, are both supporting, and you can see it with this smoke thing. This yellow smoke from my ally, and this green smoke from me. So if both allies are supporting, this will push the fight forward. As you can see, they are inching forwards ever so slowly. And the goal is to push them all the way into this other corner of the map. And that's how you win Chain of Ascension. Of course, the enemies can also push. So how this works is, if the enemies are pushing Jinara, you can see this red smoke from here. The Spine Crawler is pushing the fight for some reason. If the enemies are able to push the fight all the way here, you lose the game. And one thing to note is that if you are pushing and the enemy is pushing, the enemies will always win out. The fight will push backwards unless your ally is also helping you push. So both of you have to push just to counteract Aemon's forces. See, I am making more Hydralisks this game, letting them fight, kiting this one Hydralisk back, make sure it doesn't take that much damage. So now, as soon as I have Glevig ready, I use Glevig because you can see it does deal a lot of damage, and it spawns free units as well. Anyway, next order of business is to make the Crunt's Nest. As I mentioned earlier, you want to rush out your pack leaders as fast as possible, so you actually get ready with that. So I moved Glevig here to fight this fight, and I moved this probe and these workers accordingly. Set my army here. So I try to bait out the enemy here, but you can see they are very densely defended, so I can't quite run away in time, and Dehaka has fallen. But there's good news, because Dehaka has ability to revive himself. So all you need to do is select Dehaka's den, and then use the consume thing to feed workers. They only feed workers, no other units. So you can feed workers to Dehaka to bring him back to the fight. So yeah, you can see I'm sending these workers here. These are all controlled from Dehaka's den. So use Dehaka's den to select work or to pull workers to Dehaka's location. So Dehaka is once again back. So as I mentioned earlier, if you eat big hybrids, it will normally go very poorly because they have a ton of health, and the Devour will be on cooldown for a very long time. The exception is when the hybrid is sufficiently low health. This one is 55 health. So I Devour it. And you can see that does cause a magic explosion, which will deal damage and give Dehaka another level. Well, it doesn't give the level all the time, but it gives Dehaka a lot of essence. So continue the fight here. So the thing is, on this map, by the way, Chain of Ascension, every time you push the fight a certain distance, like here, for example, once we push the fight here, it will auto-spawn the first hybrid here, the first set of hybrid. So the first set of hybrid will push Jinara even from their distance, they don't have to stand near Jinara to push the fight. They just have to be here, existing. So the way hybrids work is they can push from anywhere on the map as long as they are in play. So what the players need to do is go to where the hybrids are hiding and destroy them to stop the enemy from pushing. As you can see, yes, they are indeed supporting this fight. And as soon as I devour that last hybrid, you can see that the fight is no longer being pushed to our corner. So that is the way the objectives on this map are being handled. So once again, both allies need to send forces here, including this worker here, which I'm trying to send over there. Start that barracks over there. And making more workers. You can see the probe has made it here. Now it is pushing once again. So yeah, that's how Chain of Ascension works. Whenever you push a certain distance, the hybrids will spawn. The exception is when you take too long to push the hybrids will automatically spawn on the timer. The first set of hybrids spawn at 9 minutes if you are not able to push far enough. The second I think at 13 minutes or something. 13 minutes. Third wave is at like 21 minutes or something. And the last is at 30 minutes, something like that. I'll have to check the exact times. But anyway, we are trying to push further. So you can see the Kran has already spawned. And I'm getting an upgrade for my Hydralisks. This one will make them move faster, but not really important, only for level 1 because they're basically your only unit at level 1. Now I'm making myself some primal hosts. As I mentioned earlier, the primal hosts will provide value as long as they stay on the field and produce creeper hosts for free. You can see there's another set of enemies supporting Amon's champion. So the strategy for me is to use, once again, Devour to overcome this fight. So you can see this is pretty lopsided fight. There's 1 lizard and 3 hydralisks versus 7 enemy hydralisks, 2 enemy lurkers, and 2 brood queens. So there is a way for Dehaka to even this fight, and that is by devouring a psionic unit. As I mentioned earlier, when you devour a psionic unit, it releases a magic fart, which will damage all enemy units nearby. And let's watch that in action. So this brood queen, a psionic unit, and as you can see, magic explosion, which instantly kills these hydralisks and severely damages this lurker. It's down to 60 health. And it even kills the other brood queen. And you can see that lurker is destroyed before it even gets to burrow. And these two are just stomped on them to finish them off. There's another brood queen here along with an attack wave. So rinse and repeat. Just go to the center of that attack wave. You can tank it as Dehaka. Devour a psionic unit. Release magic fart. And destroy wave. So that is how you deal with it. So I'm trying to... yeah, you can see there are a few more units here that are burrowed. These guys have 41 health remaining, which means I dealt about 160 damage, which is pretty nice. Pretty decent also. So I use the Primal Worm as my detection. I use the Scorching Breath. Destroy these. By the way, Scorching Breath is, as you can see, a thermal lance, which hits horizontally. Pretty good against ground forces, such as Zerglings and Marines and Zealots. And the other ability I didn't talk about is the Roar thing. The Roar, if you upgrade it to level 2, or the Roar at level 1 will slow down enemy forces. But if you upgrade Roar to level 2, you will gain the ability to disable the enemy forces from using spells. You want to get Roar level 2. That will disable things like Banshee's Cloaking, the Hybrid Casting, the Storm, and the Yamato. Lots of fun stuff. Anyway, I push into here. Eat that big hybrid, or that psionic hybrid. The hybrid dominator is psionic. It releases a magic fart when you eat it. That's why I chose to do that. Again, the side effect is that the cooldown for Devour will take a while to go off once again. You can see the Krun here, just tanking the hits. I stomp on these Zerglings to finish them off, and walk back here. You can see there are only air hybrids remaining, so I send a few Hydralisks to resume this fight. I have a singular Hydralisk, by the way, at this fight, so I was kind of forced to devour that air hybrid. It was not a good devour, but I was kind of forced to, just to allow Dehaka to shoot air. So another buff that Dehaka gets from Devour. Dehaka gets different buffs when you devour stuff. The most important one, obviously, is a psionic unit. That will reset all your cooldowns, or rather, make your cooldowns go faster, and give off that magic fart. Another one I like doing is the Devour, or the Devour of the massive unit. As you saw earlier, it allowed Dehaka to shoot back at stuff shooting at him. The next one is Devouring an air unit, which will make Dehaka fire lasers when he attacks. So you can see, yeah, he's spitting lasers at the enemy. Cleared out this camp. And resume pushing. You can see I'm still getting upgrades for Dehaka. Still trying to push. This is the attention heavy thing on this map. You need to make sure you're always pushing the fight. Anyway, once again, Glevig is available. You can see Glevig dealing several tons of damage here and really softening up their defenses. Burst down that spine crawler. Relocate over here, shooting down this other spine crawler. My Hydra's army backing him up by shooting down the corruptors. Unfortunately, the Viper is really annoying. Dehaka is revived, but it does take time. It does take time to cross all the way to this side of the map, so you can see my forces are currently in a struggle bus to try and bust through here. So you can see that there is a bunch of enemies trying to attack, and you don't want to lose your creeper hosts, so I chose to burrow them. Keep them relatively safe. My Hydralisks are relatively inexpensive, so I just let them fight head on. Or at least until Dehaka is available once again. I just walk Dehaka in here. Devour. Again, the Viper is a silent unit, so I devour that. Deal several tons of damage. Unfortunately, there's another Viper here which uses the Disabling Cloud on my entire army. So I have to revive Dehaka again. Move these Swarm hosts in front, or these Primal hosts in front. They're walking over. Moving closer with the rest of my army. Dehaka marching, and you can see Jinara is not getting pushed any further because this probe is not pushing. That notwithstanding, we are still making progress by destroying this camp over here, which is in the way. It's actually in the way of the fight. So we do want to get rid of that. Again, devouring the psionic unit to lower the cooldowns, as well as give off that magic fart. Whack these crawlers down. Like so. Probe is here. It's pushing. You can see more free units. They're just dealing free damage. These locusts, the enemy can kill them, but my primals will just keep spawning more. That is the power of free units. Now I stand over here. Delete these Hydralisks. Jump over here. Unfortunately, there are no psionic units here, which means, unfortunately, I will have to fight them with units. And you can see how that goes. The lurkers shred through my Hydralisks. Unfortunately, or rather, fortunately for me at least, the Hydralisks, as I mentioned, are relatively affordable to replace. So I just make more Hydralisks. Keep moving. So you can see the third set of hybrids are spawning. Again, they're pretty far from the fight, but they're pushing because they're hybrids. So I move the fight here. I want my primal host to be close enough to spawn locusts there and deal free damage, but I will still need to draw out the fight to me. So what I do is I run here with Dehaka in front. I use the Grunt to draw out most of the aggro, and I use Dehaka spells to really soften them up. You can see most of the ground forces are gone. It's just the hybrids and the big boys left. So once again, I will run over here and try to soften up the forces here. And when Dehaka gets low, all I have to do is run back to safety to keep Dehaka alive. Because anyway, these air hybrids are, well, they're annoying, but they're not that incredibly strong. They're really annoying, but they're not that incredibly strong. So my Hydralisks can kind of fight them head on. Shooting down these buildings, just pre-clearing out, not a big deal. We do want to push though at some point, so like I'm trying to go about here as fast as I can, so I can resume pushing, because Jinara, as she likes to point out, cannot win the fight alone. It's like General Davis. Yeah, it's like General Davis, except she doesn't die every time she fights. Only sometimes. Anyway, we are pushing here, this time with 3 workers. Continuing the march forward. So now I'll use Marvar to attack there. Again, Devour the Circuit to kill those forces there. Walk in here. Devour a Circuit to, yeah, kill that Ultralisk. Use that the worm. Move over here. Devour that Infestor. Deal more damage. And effectively cleans the whole area up. Oh, this Primal is getting damaged. Yeah, we don't want that dying right away, unless you want to see me lose. In which case, yeah, you do want to see that die. But unfortunately for you, I don't really show you guys the games that I lose, so maybe I don't know. Anyway, we are still continuously pushing. We are almost near the end, and that will spawn the last set of hybrid behind this pit over here. And you can see that they will push. They will really push this fight to the end. We actually have to engage here. Unfortunately, there are no Psionic units to devour. These are Hydralisks, Ultralisks, and Zerglings. Nothing Psionic. However, the Ultra is massive. You can see there's a lot of shootback going on. These Hydralisks are all shooting Dehaka, but they're getting shot back. That's tremendous damage on my side. Glevig is available, so I use Glevig. Fight these air hybrids. I try to stutter step my Hydralisks so they more of them are able to fight. I use the roar to disable their spell casting abilities. I use the devour to take out that hybrid. And finish it off. So we only have 3, or rather 4 hybrids remaining, and they're all air hybrid. Now 3. About to shoot them down. And as soon as they're gone, you can see how far they pushed this fight back. All the way back here. My goodness, this fight was all the way here. Might I remind you, this fight's all the way here, and the hybrids were able to push all the way back here. That's tough. Anyway, all I have to do is clean this area up. Attack wave will be cleaned up, destroyed, obliterated, annihilated, made not a thing. So now we march back and effectively end the game. Go. Base looking very peaceful. As I say that, attack wave is arriving. So I just send Dehaka out there. I mean, the rest of the army can push Jinara. But for the attack wave, I'll send Dehaka out, see what he can do.
Amon sends reinforcements to support his champion.
Walking down here. And you can see more queens. I devoured that. And there it is. So, that is level 1 Dehaka. So even though I don't have my best units, the ones I have, the Hydralisk and the Primal Host, are still pretty decent. As long as you have something to anchor them down. So the lesson for this game was kind of eat stuff. Big boy gotta eat. So yeah, devour low health units, devour psionic units, devour massive units, devour flying units to get your abilities to fight back. Anyway, you can see Dehaka 39.2. Hydralisks were quiet, were silent workers. You can see that they had about 40% of damage, so that's pretty good. So yeah, next week we'll have Han and Horner solo level 1. We'll see how that looks like. Anyway, I will see you guys next time.